Morning, Boker Tov, everyone. We are going to review Parashat Mishpatim, which we had read yesterday. Parashat Mishpatim is a parasha that is almost giving you mitzvot in bullet point form. We have over 50 mitzvot in this week's parasha, loaded, really loaded. There's a few parashiyot that we have like this. It's just like list form, just banging out the mitzvot, and it's really something that you spend years studying. There's so many masechtot, like entire books of volumes of Mishnayot, of Shas, the entire volumes based on this week's parasha. So it's obviously a very important parasha. There's a lot to cover. What I'd like to do is skip around, jump around, look at a few mitzvot, and we can always answer some questions. So the Torah speaks to us. First thing to keep in mind is that there's this mitzvah of when there is a murder, then there should be a death penalty given. Now, one thing to keep in mind here is that the Torah is, in this parasha, is very much speaking about civil laws between one and another, about living within a society, of how to treat each other as part of a society. So the Torah tells us that if one person kills another person, you need to kill that person. Motimat. But let's say the person, it wasn't premeditated murder. He didn't trap him, he didn't ambush him. It was actually inadvertent, it was unintentional, and God caused the death to happen through him. The famous example brought in the Gemara is someone takes a hammer. I have a stapler here, but use your imagination. And is banging his hammer, and as he's banging his hammer, boom, the top part, the blade or whatever it is of the axe, not a hammer, an axe, let's say, and the blade comes off the handle, goes backwards and hits someone. It wasn't intentional, so intentional, the Torah says, so what will happen is, Hashem says, is that I will designate cities for this person to escape to take refuge to. It's called the Ir Miklat. And what this is supposed to do is that it's supposed to help society continue to function. The person who murdered, in this case, did something wrong. There was some fault at hand, but it wasn't deliberate manslaughter. And so what the Torah is saying is he doesn't get the death penalty because he didn't plan to do it. However, if he's just living as a regular citizen, what we're scared of is now others are going to come kill him. And then you get into this vicious cycle where if someone's going to come kill him, maybe they'll go and take revenge from them. And now you just have everyone killing everyone. And so the Torah is trying to stop it by saying this person did something wrong. It wasn't intentional murder, so he doesn't receive the death penalty. But because of what he did, we're going to put him somewhere separate, a city of refuge. No one could come kill him, and try to defuse and de-escalate this from snowballing into something else. It's a very interesting discussion about the concept of the Ir Miklat and how the Torah is worried about one person killing the other, but it's important, that this is what happens. Unfortunately, what happens is there's always people trying to get revenge from one another, and there's these vendettas that are generational, and the Torah is saying, no, this is not, he doesn't deserve the death penalty, but he's not going to live in a normal place because there was some fault at hand, and also we don't want this to turn into one person killing another person. But this is very interesting. But if someone planned to kill deliberately, you can take him for a death penalty even from my mizbeach. So the two ways of explaining this means from my court. See, the Supreme Court that deals with capital cases, like a murder case, would go to the Supreme Court. Where did the Supreme Court sit? In the Lishkat HaGazit by the Bet HaMikdash. So Hashem is saying that the only way you would give this person the death penalty is if it goes through the Supreme Court. This isn't just take law into your own hands. It has to go through the Supreme Court that has 71 judges, that's in the place of the Bet HaMikdash. It has to be discussed. It has to be very clear. In fact, the Gemara tells us that these courts would not want to give death penalty. It's not the job of it's not something that we want to do. The whole purpose of this is to prevent people from doing these sins, and the courts in general it's not good for them to keep executing, but if it's necessary, it's necessary. Okay, I want to keep going and we'll come back, and there's a lot to discuss here. Okay, So there's this one over here. It says v'chiftach ish bor o yichre o ki yichre ish bor v'lo yichaseru v'nafal shama b'shor ochamor. If someone digs a ditch, a pit in a public street, or creates some sort of an obstacle in a public street, Baal habor yishalem, and then someone else's ox or bull or cow or whatever walks in and falls and breaks and dies, the owner of the pit, not really the owner, though the creator of the pit is required to pay. So there's a Gemara that says that this is something that doesn't belong to me, right? I'm going in Middle Neck Road and I make a pothole. I'm not the owner of Middle Neck Road, but I'm responsible for what happens. You see, the Torah here is teaching us responsibility to care for another person, not to say, oh, it's not my problem, it's not my street, someone else should fix it. If I make an obstacle, something dangerous in a public domain, it's my responsibility to make sure it gets taken care of. The Torah then speaks about all sorts of damages one causes to another and how he would be responsible to pay for it. Different types of circumstances. It's like I said, this is like all civil law, civil torts, all of these laws and damaging one person to another, financial obligations. It's all in this week's parasha. Yeah, this is another one I want to talk about. Let's say, so the Torah here tells us laws about if someone steals something, and if they steal something and it's found in their property, they need to pay double payments, etc., etc. Very important mitzvah. The Torah tells us that a witch or a magician should not be allowed to live. So what does this mean? This means someone who does black magic, a sorcerer, Torah says, receives a death penalty. There's a big dispute between the commentators, between the Rambam and the Ramban. And this is like one of those huge philosophical discussions that there's no right answer. The Torah says if there is a witch or a magician or a sorcerer, lo techayeh, don't allow them to live, meaning seek them out and get rid of them. According to the Ramban says that there is such a thing as black magic. There is such a thing as powers. And it's something that Hashem doesn't want us to do. So if someone does it, kill them. Remove them. The Rambam, on the other hand, says all of it is fake. All of it is false. None of it is real. None of it has any validity whatsoever. Therefore, if someone does it, kill them. Meaning the question is there such a thing as black magic? Is it possible for someone to use a voodoo doll to do something to someone else, to possess them, to do these type of things? I'll tell you now that there is no clear answer. This is a tremendous debate. It's a debate that comes up from generations, and you have here two characters, two figures, the Rambam and the Ramban. The Rambam says it's false. The Ramban says it's real, but it's wrong. They both agree that it shouldn't be done. They both agree it's against the Torah. They both agree that the person who does it gets a death penalty. But the question is, does it work? The Rambam says, no, it's all fake. It's all false. It's just sleight of hand. Whereas the Ramban says, no, it's possible. It's possible that it's real, but don't do it. Okay, very interesting discussion. I just wanted to mention and put that out there. Next, the Torah says this line, pretty scary. There's a concept called midah keneged midah, that God will treat people how they treat others. Midah keneged midah, measure for measure, right? Like what goes around comes around, but it doesn't happen by itself. It's that Hashem does it. So look at this line, very scary. Kol almana ve'atom lo te'anun. Do not take advantage or oppress of the vulnerable people, such as the widow or the orphan. I'm not talking about an orphan that's like a 70-year-old man who his parents died at age 90. Talking about an orphan is someone that cannot really provide for themselves, a younger person that lost a parent, and they don't have a parent to take care of themselves, and where they're collecting from charity or collecting from other people. So the Torah says a widow, similar situation, is a widow who doesn't have a husband, doesn't have a family to take care of her, so she's on her own, or an orphan that doesn't have a parent to take care of him. Don't take advantage of them, don't oppress them, don't abuse them. Look what the Torah says, and if you do take advantage of the vulnerable, Ki im tza'ok yitz'ak elai, they will be calling out to me, God says, because they don't have family to go to. The woman doesn't have a husband to go defend her. So if someone takes advantage of her, who's she going to go to? She's going to go to me, God says. And when Shamoa Eshma B'tzakato, I will listen to him. V'chara api, I'll become furious. V'harakti etchem becharev. V'hayu neshechem almanot uvnechem yetomim. I don't even want to translate this. It's so harsh. Torah says that if someone takes advantage of a widow, then what Hashem will do is take that person's life away, so his wife becomes a widow. So his children, if someone takes advantage of an orphan, Hashem will take that person's life away so that his children will become orphans. Measure for measure. You take advantage of orphans, your children will become shalom. I don't even want to say it. This is not about us. It's not anyone who would ever do such a thing. But you see the importance of treating people with respect, taking care of people, especially the people that are vulnerable, people who are not as popular, people that don't have the support around them. Our job is to support them. Our job is to think about them. Doesn't mean you need to be best friends with everyone. But chas v'shalom, to take advantage of someone, chas v'shalom, it's a terrible, terrible sin. So much so that you don't have, it doesn't say this type of expression in the Torah anywhere else, where God says that I will now come after that person and make sure that that person's wife becomes a widow and that person's child becomes an orphan. Shalom Neda shows us the importance of taking care of the vulnerable. Okay, the next section, Im Kesef Taveh Ami, I'll speak about this very briefly. There is a mitzvah from the Torah to give out loans, to loan money to people who are in need, and don't charge interest. We're not talking about someone who is, trying to go invest in some like huge real estate deal and something big. We're not talking about like these major business ventures. We're talking about someone, there's a wedding in the family and the parents don't have the money today to pay it off. They will be able to over time, but they don't have the money today. Or there's some sort of a medical thing going on at home, and they don't want to accept, they don't want to ask for charity, but they want, they need some help. There's a mitzvah to have a fund to give people loans, to give them money that they'll pay back, interest-free loans. It's a mitzvah from the Torah. In fact, the Rambam explains that it's the highest level of a mitzvah because it also maintains the dignity of the person. I'm not accepting, I'm not taking charity. I just have higher expenses today, so I'll take a loan and I'll pay it off over time, interest-free. It's a very, very important mitzvah from the Torah to think about other people. There's so much to discuss about this law. We'll keep going. Okay, so now we speak about the mitzvah of lying. The Torah tells us here, okay, there's so many things. Elohim lo tikalev v'nasim v'cham lo ta'or. Lo tisa shem hashav. Here, okay, this is the one I wanted to talk about. There's a mitzvah in the Torah that tells us that when you find an object or an item that belongs to someone, return it to them. Hashev teshivem lo. Go out of your way to find the rightful owner to return it to them. And now, if it happens that you're able to find who the owner is, you need to give it to them. The Torah tells us more than that. You don't have the ability to close your eyes from it. If you're going somewhere and you see something on the floor that you'd be able to recognize who it belongs to on the street outside, on Steamboat Road. You come out of Kennesaw on Steamboat Road and you see on the floor there's a jacket, or you see there's a coat, you see there's gloves that are a look of value. I'm not talking about something that's like the plastic vinyl gloves. During the COVID days, that actually had tons of value. You couldn't get your hands on them. I'm talking about something that has a value that is not beneath your dignity to pick it up. We're not talking about something that's worth a penny. It's something that's valuable, even a couple of dollars, whatever it is. Don't turn a blind eye towards something that you can find out who it is. It's very simple. You find the wallet. That's the biggest mitzvah, to pick up a wallet, to return an object to a person. There are laws about how you have to make sure that it's the right owner. You can't just say, put out an announcement, everyone, I found a diamond ring. Whoever it is, come and take it. I'm going to leave it in my mailbox. And then you have a responsibility to get it back to its rightful owner. So you need to ask, okay, what does it look like? How big was it? What color is it? What shape was it? You have a picture of yourself wearing it so that you could somehow cross-reference. Do you have some proof to me? Can you tell me that there was chipped in a certain area? Which way was it chipped? You ask these questions, they give you the right answers. I once had a very interesting situation where I found the wallet once. I'm not going to go through the whole story, but I found the wallet. I tracked the guy down because he had his ID in there. So I went to his address. I left my phone number behind his door. I said, "Give me a call." He gave me a call, and he's like, "Yeah, that's my wallet." And I said, "Can you bring me some sort of a proof that this is you?" And he said, "I don't have any proof. What do you want? You have my ID. I can't give you proof." Very funny. So I'm like, "So tell me about your wallet." He said, "Well, on the left side, I have my Geico insurance card. On the right side, I have this credit card." And it was exactly what he said. So you did your due diligence. You verified that it belongs to him. This is the tremendous mitzvah. You get the tremendous mitzvah of hashavat aveda, returning a lost object. Okay, there's so much to discuss. There's a mitzvah here that talks about not lying. Midvar sheker tirchak, to distance yourself from lying. One of the commentators explained that all of the mitzvot of the Torah, for the most part, it tells you not to do something or to do something. For example, in the Ten Commandments, it says, "Don't murder, lo tirsach, lo tinaf, do not commit adultery, lo tisa shem hashav, don't take God's name in vain, lo tignov, don't steal." Very clear. But when it comes to lying, the Torah tells us, midvar sheker tirchak, distance yourself from false words. It doesn't say, lo tishakir, don't lie. Why? Because it's not enough not to lie. You need to completely distance yourself. Because you know what someone could say? Someone could say, "Well, I didn't really lie." I'll give you a simple example. Like, how many books did you take? Okay, let's say I took 10 books. I just came with an example of book, but just for an argument's sake, how many books did you take? I took 2 books. And in the back of my mind is like, I took 2 and another 2 and another 2 and another 2 and another 2. But yeah, I took 2 as a group of 10. Did I say the truth? Did I take 2 books? I took 2 and others. So I took 2 books. I didn't say I took only 2 books. So now I could just justify myself by saying, well, I said the truth. I took 2. No, that's going close to false words. You took 10. Don't even go close to it. So the Torah is telling us it's not about whether what you said is accurate or not. It's about being an honest person with honesty, integrity, being a true, open person instead of trying to give these white lies. It's very important. The Torah is teaching us the beauty of proper speech. I'll say one last thing because it's very common. At the end of Ayat Chamishi, there's a mitzvah of Lo tivashel gidi b'chalev imo. Do not cook a goat, baby goat, in its mother's milk. So this mitzvah is a mitzvah that is discussed so much in the Talmud, so much in Halakha, so much in our lives. You know, people who eat kosher, meat and milk is like something that's part of your lives. Like, how long ago, what time did I eat this? What time did I eat that? Can I eat this? Is this dairy? Is this meat? These are all questions that are part of our lives. Now, I'll just elaborate just a little bit. The Torah tells us 3 times, Lo tevashel gedi b'chalev imo. Do not cook a goat in its mother's milk. It says it 3 times. Why 3 times? The Midrash explains, the Gemara explains 3 times. Once to tell you not to cook it, because it says don't cook. Another time it says not to eat it, because you cook it in order to eat it. And since it's redundant, since it's repetitive, it's coming to teach you something else. What is it coming to teach you? Don't eat it. And the third one is coming to teach you not even to benefit from it, which means don't be a franchisee of a McDonald's selling cheeseburgers. Even if it was kosher, even if it was done with proper shechita, you should not get any benefit from meat and milk together. No benefit. So no cooking, no eating, no benefiting. The Torah talks to us about a goat in its mother's milk. Although our sages explain that Dibra Torah B'Lashon Hoveh, the Torah just gave an example of what's prohibited. It's not just a goat. It's really any animal, domesticated animal. Machloket about, let's say, wild animals like a deer, but for all intents and purposes, definitely our sages explained this that it works with all. This applies to all domesticated animals, such as cows, sheep, and goat. It applies to all of them. And it says in its mother's milk. Again, that was a common practice. It seems like there was a practice for people to take a goat that they're going to kill, put it in its mother's milk. So the Torah gave an example, but this is just an example of how our sages explain, and it's really any mother's milk of any of these animals. So if someone takes goat meat and cooks it in cow milk, it's the same equivalent mitzvah or prohibition of the Torah. This is lo ta'aseh, this negative mitzvah. However, if it's an animal that does not have milk, then it would not fit in the Torah prohibition. So, for example, chicken. Chicken doesn't have milk. The mother of the chicken is also a chicken and it doesn't have milk. Therefore, from the Torah, one would be allowed to have chicken cooked in dairy from the Torah. However, throughout the years, it became very clear that people view chicken meat or poultry meat very similar to beef. It's very similar. And that, it's not a surprise. People deal with them together. You're in the kitchen, you're making two choresh. One of them has chicken, one of them has beef. You mix them all up. You use something to stir this one, then you use this one to stir that one. They're very similar. Very often you have like chicken and beef. Yeah, okay, the texture is a little bit different, but there's dark meat that some of dark chicken meat could be a little bit fattier. To get to the cut to the chase, the Chazal explained that it's become very clear that throughout history, this wasn't just something they came up with in a vacuum. They saw, they experienced, people knew that chicken poultry meat is very similar to beef. And therefore, people were getting confused. They were doing something with this, not doing with this. Sanhedrin came up and said, we now have to expand the mitzvah of the Torah to poultry, not because we are saying that we want to add to the Torah. We're being very clear and transparent that it's not against the Torah. So there's nothing wrong with you're adding to the Torah. No, we're not adding to the Torah, but what we're doing is we're creating a fence and saying since this type of chicken, poultry meat is very similar to beef, people get confused, so we're going to say none of this is allowed. And then the Gemara then extends it, not only not to eat them together, cooked together, but even not to eat meat followed by dairy. There's all different opinions. Some Shulchan Aruch says to wait 6 hours. Some have the custom to wait 1 hour. Some have the custom to wait 3 hours. Some wait 3 for chicken, 6 for meat. All different sort of customs. If you're asking what the halakha says, halakha Shulchan Aruch says 6 hours, or around 6 hours, approximately 6 hours. So when you say approximately 6 hours, what does that mean? That means in the times of the Gemara, they didn't have precise watches to know exactly what. It's not like at 5:59, I'm not allowed to. Then the second it hits 6, I'm allowed to. They didn't have that type of measurement tool. 6 hours means 6 hours. It means 5 hours and 50 minutes is like basically 6 hours. You shouldn't abuse this. Some people will say if it's 5 hours and a second, it's already like the 6 hour. Okay, whatever. You do it, whatever your custom is. But Shulchan Aruch says 6 hours, and that's what we follow. We follow the 6 hours. Again, it's all to maintain this mitzvah, this very important mitzvah of kashrut. I think I went on a little bit longer than I wanted to. I'm going to pause there and open up if anyone has any questions. Any questions? Let me look at the chat. Okay, if there's no questions, I'll go for one more minute. I'll say something else here. Okay. No questions? Okay, so this is another mitzvah that will point out this. There's a whole section in this week's parasha that's related to the Shalosh Regalim. This is that we're being introduced to the concept of the 3 holidays. And Torah tells us here, 6 days of the week you work, 7th day you rest, your animals have to rest. And then the Torah says, Shalosh Regalim 3 times, Tachol Li Bashana, you should have a celebration, Chag HaMatzot, the holiday of Matzot, the Moed Chodesh Aviv, in the season of the spring. I'll mention that. I'll come back to that in a second. Chag HaKatzir, the holiday of the harvesting. That's Shavuot because it's the season of harvesting the grain. And then Chag HaAsif is the holiday of the gathering because that's at the end of the year you're gathering all the fruits and vegetables, really the vegetables you're gathering from the ground, that's the holiday of Sukkot. So one thing that's interesting here, the Torah says Chag Chodesh Ha'aviv, the holiday of Pesach has to be in the spring, Chodesh Ha'aviv. I'm going to say something now. Don't get too confused. I'm just going to, the numbers are simple here. How many days are there in the solar calendar, or what we have the Gregorian calendar? We have 365 and a quarter days, right? The year is 365 days, except once every 4 years, we have a leap year, and we add an extra day. So that year is 366 days. So on average, each year is 365.25 days. Truth is, that's not even precise because, and we have an adjustment that the Gregorian calendar has another adjustment. So it's really 365.2425 days. Okay, good. Don't get too confused. 365 and a quarter. How many days are there in the lunar year? What do I mean by lunar? What I mean is, in the Jewish calendar, we go by the moon. The moon cycle is approximately 29 and a half days. It's not exactly 29 and a half, but let's just say it's 29 and a half for argument's sake. So how do you deal with 29 and a half? So half the months are going to be 29 days, half the months are 30 days, right? So in a year, we have 12 months, half are 29, half are 30. You do the math. If you do 29 and a half times 12, you get 354. So my question for you is, 354 days in the lunar calendar, 365 days in the solar calendar. That's a difference of 11 days. That means if you have 12 months of the English calendar, 12 months of the Hebrew calendar, there's 11 days difference. So how are we supposed to deal with it? So the first thing you could say is don't deal with it. It is what it is. Let the calendar keep going. And that's why their holidays can change and they will fall back by about 11 days every year. So you could have one of their holidays that'll be in the spring, and then a couple months later it'll be in the winter. A couple months later it's going to be in the autumn. A couple months later, a couple of years later it'll be in the autumn, and then it'll be in the summer, because they're not synchronized. We have to synchronize our calendars. Why? Because of this line. The Torah says the holiday of Sukkot is Chag Ha'aviv. It has to be in the spring season. So you can't let it fall back into the winter. So what do? What we do is we add in an extra month every so often to make sure that Pesach stays in the spring. Pesach always has to be in the spring, and if it ever falls before the spring, we have this extra month, this leap year. We add an extra month, a month of Adar. That will now make sure that our calendars are being synchronized. That whole thing of getting an extra Adar is because of this line in the Torah that tells us that the holiday of Pesach has to be in the spring, because when we left Egypt, we left in the spring. So we want the holiday to be in the same season that it was when we initially left Mitzrayim. Okay, with that, we'll stop. Be'ezrat Hashem, this week is going to be Rosh Chodesh Adar. Monday night, Tuesday, and Wednesday is going to be Rosh Chodesh Adar. The first day of the month of Adar is Wednesday. Our sages teach us that the month of Adar is a month to increase our happiness. Mishanichnas Adar Marbim Besimcha. I pray that Be'ezrat Hashem, everyone here and the entire larger community has reason to be very happy and to rejoice and to be excited and to really be Marbeh Besimcha, to increase their happiness, and also to not just from external factors but from internal factors. To really this month as a training process, when something happens that doesn't go our way, to tell ourselves to be happy. This is from Hashem, Liot B'Simcha. Be'ezrat Hashem, I really pray that we're all able to attain true simcha, true happiness in this month, going for many, many, many years ahead. Shavua Tov, Chodesh Tov. See you all next week.
Thank you, Rabbi. Shavua Tov.